Uncle Iroh is remembered as one of the kindest and wisest characters in animated fiction, but before he became a man who serves the best tea in town with the side of giving life-changing advice, he was a ruthless Fire Nation general responsible for one of the most horrifying and bloodiest campaigns in the 100-Year War. And this raises a difficult question fans rarely ask. How did a man capable of breaking his victims become someone the world forgave? This isn't a tale where a single act of heroism erases the past, but a chronicle of loss, humility, and virtue lived without ever asking for pardon. Born 45 years after the Air Nomad genocide, Iroh entered a world already shaped by fire and conquest. He was the eldest son of Fire Lord Azulon, grandson of Fire Lord Sozin, the man who ignited the 100-Year War, and heir to a throne built on bloodshed. War wasn't something Iroh learned later in life, it was the world he was raised in. By birthright, he was destined to rule the Fire Nation. But standing beside him was his younger brother Ozai, a rival long before he was ever a tyrant. Even in their earliest years, the bond between the brothers was strained. What began as competition, games of pai sho, tests of skill, subtle power struggles, slowly revealed something deeper. Where Iroh saw honor and tradition, Ozai displayed a cold ambition, ruthless and unyielding, a hunger for power that felt less like duty and more like obsession. Years later, Iroh would come to regret how he handled that relationship. He would realize that instead of guiding his brother toward a better path, he chose distance, and in doing so, left Ozai to become exactly what he'd one day be. Years later, Iroh became a father. His son Lu Ten was not just his legacy, he was his joy, someone Iroh loved more than anything in the world. Even tea. Unlike his own upbringing, Lu Ten's childhood wasn't consumed entirely by court politics or rivalry. Iroh personally tutored him alongside the royal instructors, shielding him as much as he could from the poisonous infighting of the royal family. Whenever possible, Iroh took Lu Ten away from the capital, retreating him to places like Ember Island. Moments of peace, laughter, and normalcy, rare luxuries in a family built on power and conquest. But even as a devoted father, Iroh was changing in quieter ways. At some point in his life, he stepped beyond the borders of the Fire Nation, not as a general, but as a seeker. He traveled to the water tribes, studying their philosophy of flow and redirection. From them, Iroh learned to guide energy rather than overpower it, knowledge that will later become the foundation for lightning redirection. His journey didn't stop there. Iroh eventually sought out the Sun Warriors, an ancient civilization that preserved firebending in its purest form, untouched by war, hatred, or domination. There, Iroh stood before Ran and Shaw, the last surviving dragons. Creatures his own nation had nearly driven to extinction, hunted not for necessity, but for sport. The dragons did not teach Iroh to burn hotter or strike harder, they taught him balance. Fire, they showed him, was not born from rage, but from life itself. Breath, warmth, and harmony. This understanding marked a turning point. It was here that Iroh began distancing himself from his father's militaristic worldview, not in rebellion, but in quiet rejection. To protect the dragons, Iroh later spread the lie that he had slain the last of them himself, and because of his newfound mastery, his ability to breathe fire effortlessly, the world would come to know him as the Dragon of the West, a title earned not through destruction, but through restraint. This is where Iroh's story pivots and sparks the flame of who he will eventually become. As Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, there was never real choice. Duty, reinforced by family expectation and public pressure, eventually pulled him fully into the war. Like his father before him, Iroh became a Fire Nation general, and he wasn't reluctant. He didn't merely accept this role, he thrived in it. He embraced conquest, command, and the power that came with it. The battlefield sharpened him, and with every victory, his reputation grew darker. Entire nations learned to fear his name. When Iroh returned home from war, he did not come back as a monster, at least not to those inside the palace. He was still a father, still an uncle. He spent his rare moments of peace with Lu Ten, grounding himself in family, laughter, and routine. And during these years, he grew especially close to his younger nephew Zuko, teaching him pai sho, taking him to festivals, sneaking through palace kitchens in search of stolen snacks. It was a strange contradiction. The same man who burned cities abroad became gentle the moment he crossed the palace gates. But war does not stay contained forever. As Liu Ten grew older, he began to look toward the battlefield with the same sense of duty his father once had. When he expressed his desire to join the military, Iroh did something unthinkable for a Fire Nation general. He begged his son to reconsider. Liu Ten refused. At first, Iroh used his influence to protect him, placing his son in less brutal war zones. But as Liu Ten rose through the ranks, that protection faded. Eventually, he served directly under his father's command. By this time, Iroh was more than respected. He was feared. His campaigns were relentlessly successful. Victory followed him wherever he went. But those victories came at a cost. Years of war aged him beyond his body. The weight of command, the lives lost, the fire he wielded, all of it carved itself into him, physically and psychologically. And soon, the war would demand its final payment. For 600 days, the Fire Nation laid siege to Ba Sing Se. 600 days of fire raining against stone. 600 days of soldiers starving at the gates. 600 days of fathers not returning home. And then, something happened that no military strategy could ever account for. Liu Ten died. Not in glory, not in triumph, not even at the inner wall. He died like so many other young men, ground beneath the machine of conquest. And in that moment, the Dragon of the West stopped burning. Iroh had breached the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, something no general in history had ever accomplished. Victory was within reach, but when Liu Ten fell, Iroh lost the will to continue. For the first time, the war was no longer strategy, it was personal. He saw what he had been doing, not just to the Earth Kingdom, not just to the Water Tribes, but to his own blood. Children of all nations sacrificed for an idea that suddenly felt hollow, and so the unthinkable happened. Iroh ordered a retreat, not because he couldn't win, but because he finally understood the cost. In the Fire Nation, this was humiliation. To the world, he became the general who failed. To Ozai, he became weak. And when Fire Lord Azulon died shortly after, the throne that was once Iroh's birthright passed to his younger brother. He did not fight for it. Years earlier he would have, but something inside him had burned out, or perhaps burned clean. What looked like a fall from power was actually the beginning of transformation. After Ba Sing Se, Iroh disappeared from the center of power. He traveled, not as a conqueror, but as a seeker. He walked the world he had once tried to dominate. He listened, he reflected, he entered the spirit world in search of Liu Ten. And though he never found his son, he found something else. Perspective. Grief broke the illusion that conquest equals legacy. Power had not protected his son. Honor had not saved him. Ambition had not fulfilled him. And in losing everything he thought he had wanted, Iroh began becoming who he truly was. When Ozai burned Zuko's face in the Agni Kai, Iroh witnessed something he recognized. Not strength, not discipline, but the same ruthless ambition he once admired in his brother. This time, he did not distance himself. He chose differently. He chose to stand beside the scarred boy. For 3 years, Iroh followed Zuko into exile. On paper, he was helping him hunt the Avatar. In reality, he was trying to save him from becoming Ozai. And this is what makes Iroh extraordinary. He never forced Zuko to change. He never controlled him. He never shamed him. He offered tea, stories, patience, space. He let Zuko fail. He let Zuko choose. He let Zuko betray him. Because Iroh understood something most people don't. Redemption cannot be commanded. It must be discovered. Even when Zuko sided with Azula and Ba Sing Se, even when he helped him take the city Iroh once nearly conquered, Iroh did not curse him. He did not scream. He looked at him with heartbreak, not anger. That silence hurt him more than any fire blast. In prison, Iroh trained, not just his body, his spirit. He prepared, but not for revenge, for restoration. When he finally broke free, he did not storm the throne. He did not challenge Ozai. He led the Order of the White Lotus to liberate Ba Sing Se, the same city he once tried to conquer. This time, he fought for the Fire Nation, but for balance. His vision as a young prince of conquering Ba Sing Se came true, just not in the same way he imagined. He didn't capture it, he freed it. And when Zuko offered him the throne, Iroh refused because he finally understood something younger Iroh never could. The point of life is not power, it is peace. He reopened the Jasmine Dragon, not as a fallen prince, but as a fulfilled man, serving tea, offering guidance, living simply. No apologies demanded, no pardons requested. He did not erase the past, he outgrew it. So how did the world forgive Iroh? The truth is, he never asked it to. Redemption in Avatar is not about public approval, it is about alignment. Iroh changed long before anyone recognized it. He took responsibility for the war, he faced those who hated him, he refused to die for false honor, he chose life, and helped others choose it too. That is why he is remembered not as a war criminal, but as a wise old man pouring tea, because the measure of a life is not where it begins, it is where it turns. And Iroh turned, not because he was defeated, but because he finally understood. Fire can destroy, or it can warm, and the Dragon of the West chose warmth.